Did Book Three's finale arc really stick the landing? I will say this upfront right now because I know what I'll be saying by the end of this video. DragonFable's Book 3 Convergence arc is probably one of my favorite arcs in this entire game. Every quest in this arc either wraps up an old plotline in the main story or elaborates further on it. This arc was a big deal. It had a huge weight on its shoulders to deliver, and while it did pay off for the most part, there are a few issues in this arc. Now I have to give credit to the absolutely talented developers for pulling this arc off in the best way they could. While this saga has some flaws which I will get into, I have to absolutely highlight everything awesome about it. Firstly, this might be a criticism for the entire main story of Book 3. This saga is the only one which feels like the developers know exactly what they are doing. In my opinion, all the earlier main story arcs in Book 3 such as Early Solonesca, Tournament of Champions, and the Proclamation War feel like genuine filler in comparison to Convergence. These arcs feel really aimless for most of their story until a certain key event happens in them. Early Solonesca is just waiting for the Akanthas confrontation. Proclamation War is constantly stalling for 3 whole sagas while Janya practices soul weaving. Meanwhile, Convergence is straight to the point in almost every quest. This could be just because it is the final arc, but I feel like this was also when the developers finally realized their vision and went full throttle. Let's actually talk about the highlights of Convergence now. This arc has a strong introduction with the two-parter The Point of No Return Part 1 and 2. While the first part was slightly subpar, the second part more than makes up for it with Sepulchre and Altion trying to fight off Akanthas. This low-key made me scream in excitement. Genuinely, I can't believe they actually did this. Sepulchre was the big bad for Book 1 and he shows genuine fear for whatever Akanthas is planning. Akanthas being able to resist the duo's attempt was an incredible feat, and it is also consistent with when Akanthas and Sepulchre faced off against each other earlier in the main story. Anyway, Janya and Akanthas head for the Mana Core while the hero and the gang play catch up. Now here are a few quests that stood out to me, such as From the Embers for the cool backstory and visuals, Project Casca for the awesome reference to Warner from the Miller's saga, For the Fallen for Zad's death, and The Arrival for bringing in Warlick and Alexander to the fight. I'll skip ahead to the 5-part finale now, as we all know the few quests between The Arrival and Convergence Part 1 are bangers, so it's redundant to elaborate on those. Alright, I forgot, the final steps bring in Aegis into the finale, which was an awesome surprise. Convergence Part 1 begins with the heroes confronting Janya and unmasking Akanthas. We get some really top tier dialogues between Janya and the hero, and it's really thrilling. And finally, we get to fight Janya. Regular Janya is a pretty decent fight. I'm glad it was pretty challenging and fun as well, with Aegis coming in to save the hero. Once the fight is over, Janya refuses to give up and summons her soul ally, Hesper Horus, for I can't believe this is happening, synchronization! And of course, the quest had to end there and make us wait for almost an entire month to see the payoff. But my gosh, the wait was absolutely worth it. On to Convergence Part 2. In my opinion, this quest is the peak of this arc. Everything has been leading up to this final fight. We've been on this journey for a long time and waiting to finally defeat Janya. It was finally time for the ultimate face-off. Janya synchronizes with the Soul Ally and we get one of the best sequences in the whole game where Janya transforms into a synchronized form. And the music? Don't even get me started on it. The fact that they made an original theme for regular Janya and a different theme for a sync form is crazy. Like the whole transformation sequence matches the track's beats as well, as long as your PC doesn't lag. And man, the final design for Janya, perfection. Seriously, Dove or Drace, whoever cooked this design up, you deserve all the praise. With Janya fully synced and the music being a banger, there was no brainer. This is gonna be a quest to remember. This fight is another good fight that challenges the player and it isn't some easy winnable fight. FYI, this only applies to the normal fight, not the extreme version which is actually way more tougher and only for like in-goers. It's pretty tough for like casual players. We also got a whole cutscene within the fight itself. They're really upping their tech with this fight. Anyway, Janya gets defeated and we actually win against her. Unfortunately, stupid Akanthas still exists and carries the Doom device down to the Mana Core. Now obviously it isn't a book finale without Draco going full Titan mode, so of course we get an awesome sequence of Draco going Titan. Draco and the hero dive into the Mana Core, leading us to the next quest. Alas, this quest and onward is where the flaws show up. This quest has a lot of low dump, so let's just get to the part where Akanthas blows the Doom device up. I'm surprised he actually went through with it, honestly. Anyway, there was a pretty cool visual, but that device ended up doing nothing and didn't even awaken the Equilibria. Akanthas blames the hero and Draco. Draco flies at Akanthas and Akanthas immediately punches poor Draco to the ground. Akanthas! Why? This literally starts book 4. Why? Equilibria awakens and kills Acanthus in a comedic way. Now, there are two sides to what happened to Acanthus. People either like it or dislike it, and there are good reasons for both. People like it because Acanthus is practically just a nuisance and low-key doesn't deserve a good send-off. He's a pathetic character that really just doesn't feel super important in this whole story. I'm so getting called out for this. People hate it because Acanthus has been the only other relevant Book 3 villain, and it feels so wrong for Acanthus to just die like this after building up the hype for so long. Now look, I asked the people who hate this, how did you expect the hero and Draco to stand a chance against Acanthus when they were literally shown to fail earlier in the main story when they confronted him for the first time? They were basically in good health that time too, whereas in the Mana Core, the hero and Draco are under the core's pressure and they just fought Janya twice. Realistically, this was a losing battle by default. Anyway, I like this ending for Acanthus because he's a pathetic character, but I do think that it could have been slightly more dramatic than doing it so nonchalantly for such a character. Anyway, the Equilibria threatens to reset all of lore. Now this is where the biggest issue comes in. This book could have just ended here and given a small tease to the next book, but oh no, we gotta make it a whole thing. I seriously didn't like this direction. As much as I'll be praising the next two quests, I really don't like that they did this. Book 3's finale randomly brings in the Equilibria and they just start threatening the entire lore. It feels too random of an event to accept. We barely got enough setup for it and it feels so forced to just shove this at the end only to trap the three mages. Oh well, let's see what they do with this new addition to the story. What's the next quest name again? Oh right, The End of Magic Part 1. Honestly, I might as well just discuss both parts together. First part. Hero and Draco brief the team on what's about to happen and the team begins to prepare a binding spell that will hold the Equilibria for enough time while the hero and the others figure out a permanent solution to the Equilibria's threat. We get an awesome original soundtrack with a callback to the main theme of DragonFable as the godlike tentacles or whatever rise up from the core. We hold off those tendrils while the gang sets up the magical spell. Suddenly, the Equilibria summons some sort of a guardian, the aspect of order, to grab onto the platform of the heroes. In the second part, we continue where we had left off, with the aspect of order holding onto our platform. It immediately breaks off the chains, causing the three mages, Warlick, Alexander, and Janya to create a magical chain to hold the platform together. Another new banger original soundtrack. Now I won't lie, I did tear up a bit when the main theme was playing with this one. This whole book was quite a ride and it was just unreal to play its finale. We fired up the aspect of order, the three mages say their goodbyes to us and seal themselves within the containment spell. This was a really beautiful scene, seeing these characters come so far and getting the closure they needed. Finally, that's a wrap up for this 5-part finale. The epilogue is pretty mid. Barely anything good about it except for the ending conversation between the hero and Sepulchre. This was like the only highlight of the epilogue. I also don't like that they had the main theme playing at the end of the epilogue and panning towards the statue of three mages only to not reveal the book 4 title. Like, it was right there. But whatever, book 4 is pretty near anyway, so it's not too big of an issue. Now to answer the main question, did book 3's finale arc stick the landing? I used to think this was an obvious yes, but after multiple debates about this finale at FN and working on this video, in my opinion, I don't think this arc stuck the landing. Don't get me wrong, this arc was a banger, easily the best main story arc of book 3. It was practically perfect until the Mana Core, where it really just became a part 1 of another story, which is really disappointing. The issue with this arc is that it sets up such an insane threat that it feels far too random and forced. A tease of the Equilibria waking up would have been enough. It did not need to cause such havoc immediately because now there is a major sense of urgency in book 4. Like they cannot have any filler quests now because now they have to really like focus in on the story. However, the developers did go full throttle with this finale, giving us 2 banger quests right after the introduction of the equilibrium. So while this setup was really out of place, it was still pulled off magnificently. Anyway, my final takeaway would be that playing this arc was an incredible experience, and it was truly an end to such a wonderful era of DragonFable. The DF team has really knocked it out of the park with this one, and I'm super hyped to see what the developers have in store for the future of DragonFable. That's all I got for this video. Battle on!